is Sherrie Lea Morgan, who is joining us just north of Atlanta. And she has a new book out this fall, which is the third of her Coweta County series. Oh, Sherrie, I'm sorry. I've got you muted. Hold on one second. There we go. Now you're
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Sherrie Morgan. I prefer to be called Sherrie. I write paranormal romance. All my books have a ghost somewhere in there, and they interact with the characters. I have a book coming out. It's the third book of my Heroes of Coweta County, come out this fall, and I'm looking forward to that. And I appreciate you all having me here tonight.
And Synithia Terrace is joining us from Australia. Her next book is out at the end of the year, which will be book 3 in her Love Down Under series.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I write the Love Down Under series. The first book came out in December last year. The second novel, Let Sleeping Dogs Lie, came out in July, and the third one will be coming out in December, and that is Get Off Your High Horse.
Our fourth panelist is, I'm so sorry, guys. Our fourth panelist is Bridget Liang. She's in Toronto, Ontario, and they have a new academic book out, Trans and Autistic, Stories from Life at the Intersection.
Hey, I'm also a PhD student at York University, studying in gender feminist women's studies. That's the program name. And I'm trying to think what else would be interesting. I write stuff from post-apocalyptic speculative fiction, what I'm here for, which is the YA queer trans romance, and academic stuff because I am a PhD student, so it is my life. Feminist, queer, trans, disability scholar, it is my thing.
Thank you so much. And then our final author is Synithia Williams, who is in Columbia, South Carolina, and has a new book out August 25th called Scandalous Secrets.
Hey everybody, I'm Synithia Williams. I write contemporary romance and also women's fiction under the name Nita Brooks. Scandalous Secrets, which comes out August 25th, is the second book in my Jackson Falls series, which is a big soapy romance that I thought of because I love soap operas. I grew up watching them, and I had the thought of what if Victor Newman from Young and the Restless was Black and his family was Black, and so that's how I got my Jackson Falls series idea. So thank you for having me. I look forward to the panel.
Well, thank you guys all so very much, and everyone who's joining us. We hope that this will be great and the perfect break to a very interesting and unusual summer. So our first question is, what stories have really spoken to you or have been your inspiration? What made you get started writing in this genre?
Does it matter who starts? Like,
no, I think anyone who's got a story to start.
I've been reading romance since like I was 12 or 13, getting them from the library and then filling out the card to get like the 4 free romances that was in the middle of the book. And I've been reading them forever, and I've always loved them. And even in high school, instead of paying attention in math class, I would just like handwrite stories, and I still have those handwritten pages of the books that I wrote. So I've always been into it and loving it. Mostly historical and paranormal is what I love to read. But when I discovered my first Beverly Jenkins historical and saw a historical romance with characters that looked like me and they were strong and awesome and just living and being in love, I think that was one of the first things that inspired me to want to write strong, great love stories, just showing people of color being happy, living their best lives.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll go next.
Awesome.
I started reading Barbara Cartland romances because a girlfriend had a stockpile of them. And I moved on from there to reading Harlequin. And I really liked the escapism. I liked that it was kind of real people as opposed to paranormal or fantasy or Star Wars or something like that. And I think the book that had the biggest impact on me was White Palace by Glenn Savin. And it's about an older woman, younger man. It was made into a movie. And part of the story is that not only is the woman older, she works at a place like White Castle. She's kind of overweight. And this young, perfect Ken kind of person falls in love with her, but struggles with loving her because she's so not perfect. And that theme of accepting yourself, finding a place, finding people who accept you for who you are and validate you has been a theme that just kind of comes up in my stories over and over and over again without really being intentional. So for me, it was the escapism, the fantasy of the Harlequin romances. And then when I started writing, I just wanted to write something that I knew, something that felt good. And it was romance.
That's fantastic.
Well, I'll jump in. I've read romance since forever. I'm not going to say about what book I fell in love with because it is sort of show my age, but I've probably written stories since I was younger, but it wasn't until probably about 9 years ago that I seriously pursued writing as a career. As a single parent, I worked full time. I didn't have a lot of time to write, but I did write little stories, and loved Harlequin, even loved Silhouette even more, and just I'm a romantic at heart, so I just want to share stories because they're, to me, if you can have two people just fall in love, meet and fall in love, then there's hope for those people who are constantly looking for the right one, the permanent partner, and sometimes it just happens, and that's the beauty that captured me.
That's fantastic. Well, that kind of reminds me, like, I got started reading these books because I was in a very small town and wanted so badly to go someplace else that was just fantastic. I know, Synithia, you said that your books are based off of where you are, Australia. Can you tell us anything about how you got started?
I started reading romance when I was a teenager. There was a series of books and they were called Sweet Dreams books. And they were all about teenagers, and it was set in the States, and they were all sweet romances, all ended lovely, and I really, really liked them. But the one book that was totally not really romance was a book called Tomboy, and it was set in New York City based around the gangs. And the leader of a gang was a young girl whose mother had died and whose dad was an alcoholic. And it showed us through her transformation and her journey. And I found that really interesting and it really stuck with me. And I based a story in high school around that, and the teacher loved it and encouraged me to keep writing. So I did.
That's fantastic. I know, Bridget, you said that your writing covers just a whole bunch of different genres. So I would love to know what got you started into writing a love story type book over some of the other ones that you've done, since you do nonfiction as well as fiction.
Yeah, so one of the major reasons why I write what I do is because I felt by that is because I'm trans, because I am queer, because I am mixed race, because I am fat, because I am disabled. You don't see people like me in a lot of these romance books. And so the stories that I would see were absolutely nothing like me, and it made me feel like I was not worthy of romance. And so when I was like 14, I discovered fan fiction, which a lot of the younger folks will actually know that's a lie, which has been a bastion and a community of sorts, although it also gave me other issues. But anyways, it at least made some things intelligible, because the vast majority of the stories were between two guys having sexual and romantic relationships, all the best romantic feelings. And what but still it was being written about like the most normative white boys having romances with each other, and then like buying a house and having children. So it was like, this is also not me. And so what drove me to write fiction was, okay, so I started with the post-apocalyptic fiction because it was my way of venting frustration. Also did it as a class assignment. And what my first published piece was revenge, is vengeance on specifically the people that harmed me in growing up. And it was very political, it's very violent. So if you find my first publication, be warned, it is incredibly violent. There is gore, blood, and all sorts of fun things. And I came to this because I wanted to write a story where someone who is like me, doesn't die, is the hero, and ends up in a romantic relationship at the end, and has friends, and good things happen to them mostly. So my book, What Makes You Beautiful, here is about what my childhood teenage self wished I could have seen, because it's like, this is someone who is kind of like me, who actually has good things happen to them. And when was the last time you saw like a trans woman or trans girl not end up dead in the media?
Has been tough times. Well, that actually gives us a great segue into our next question, which I am actually going to start by asking you, Bridget, since I ended with the last question with you. How has tackling this genre changed your thoughts on romance and love in your real life?
That's one of the questions I actually don't know how to answer completely. But what is interesting that after I published this book, I was actually able to enter a romantic relationship for the first time in my life. And so I actually started to get it. I started to get the depths of the things I've spent the past 15 years reading about, and to actually experience it in the body versus like reading about it and being like, I wish this was me. So that was, I think, the one thing.
Well, that is absolutely fantastic. And so I'm going to open this question up to the rest of the panel. Sherrie, since I know that you work more in the paranormal side of things, has writing paranormal love stories changed your thoughts on romance at all? I will give you a second to unmute. EmKay or, oh, Sherrie, you're back.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. I was trying to unmute myself, and I don't know. Anyways, first, my paranormal have ghosts in them, but I grew up with most ghost stories being scary stories. And then I saw The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, and then I got older, and I want to be realistic. None of my stories have a relationship with the ghosts, the romantic relationship. I read a story that had that, and I guess the path that I take is I'm a big believer in ghosts and spirits. And when I started writing romance, I wanted to include stories that I've read about and heard about that I'm a twin. I'm trying to figure out the best way to answer this. Okay, I'm a twin. I've had my best friend since the day I was born. Not everybody's a twin. And I kept thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have somebody to go through this whole meeting somebody, falling in love, not sure if it's love, all the drama and angst that goes with starting a new relationship, to have somebody they could talk to, not being themselves and not always being a family member, because some people don't have family members. So I bring my ghosts to life, and they're usually partners, like they reside in my characters' homes. I write paranormal romance thrillers. All mine have serial killers in them. And most of my books have, yeah, all of them. And ghosts are companions, not partners, companions. They help and I think growing up, my family was involved in exploring that belief. And I thought, wouldn't it be, again, I'm talking too much. I'm sorry. But I love romance. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat for people to see that ghosts don't have to be scary? They can be helpful if you're not afraid of them. And I've always wanted to write romance, but writing paranormal can be tricky because there are those out there who don't believe in it. I have a lot of Wiccan and Native American things in some of my books, and that makes people nervous. But I try to present it in the way that I experienced it, which is, yeah, it's not that scary. I guess that's my whole thing. It's just not that scary. And I want to bring that to the readers.
No, I think that's awesome. I think that's a great thing to kind of learn about the world in general, because there are times when everything seems very scary, and it's nice to know that there's something that you're like, maybe it's not so bad. Synithia, EmKay, or Cynthia, would either of you or any of you guys like to take a stab at this question?
Sure, I will. I tend to be, I think, on the optimistic side. I view life through rose-colored glasses. So many of my stories have that kind of happy ever after feel to them. And to me, that's important because I think it's just an escape for people. I describe my romances as kind of like potato chip romances. They're usually short, between 5,000 and 25,000 words. They take, anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. So they're short, but for somebody who's really busy and wants to just escape into a fun, humorous, romantic story, that's what I've decided as an author. That's the kind of experience I want to create for my readers. When I thought about this question, how you were asking, has writing romance changed my perspective on things? I really come at my writing from a business perspective. And I think one of the things about writing romance, being part of the romantic fiction community, is hugely beneficial because for very many years, RWA provided education for its members. They were savvy about the business. They were savvy about writing. They were well connected. And romance authors have been on the forefront of several trends in the publishing world, particularly self-publishing. And so here you have this innovative group of authors who are getting things done, making stuff happen, all while doing it backwards in high heels, like they used to describe about dancing. So I think writing romance is an advantage in that we have a very dynamic, responsive community that lifts the other members up.
That's fantastic.
I'll say writing romance hasn't changed my view of romance in real life. I write romance because I want it to also reflect what I see in real life. I'm definitely not the first person to have written romance with Black people as the main characters, but that's what I see. And when you look at the media, a lot of times you don't see stories of just Black people being happy, just meeting and falling in love and living their lives. And that's what I see, and that's what I'm surrounded by. My parents celebrate their 40th anniversary tomorrow. I have lots of aunts and uncles who are still together. I hang out with other married couples. And so I just wanted to write stories that were reflective of what I see every day, of people who, are happily in relationships. We all have struggled in relationships because no relationship is just 100% easy, but we all find a way to kind of get through the hard things in life because we love each other. And I just wanted to reflect that. Well, I had a little dash of messiness and drama to my stories, but I did want to kind of reflect that in my writing.
That's totally realistic though. Like, you know what? There are happy stories out there, and I do feel like the media does underrepresent those kind of stories. Like, it's a lot of, I will say the last few months have been very very different than our usual world. Synithia, did you have any thoughts on that? Oh no, you're still muted. Well, I will give you a minute to unmute. Oh, I think you might have done it.
Oh, good. It didn't work before. I don't think writing romances has changed my idea of romance. I've always had romantic notions. When I write romance, I try to add real life into there, so it's not always the nice fluffy romance that you see. So in my first book, The Cat's Out of the Bag, we have a tortured heroine who's come out of a domestic violence relationship, and we watch her grow and trust through the book. So I think it's really important to portray real life in romance as well.
No, I think that's true. I am going to circle back to what EmKay said a second ago about how that as a genre, you guys tend to lead the charge in embracing new technology and self-publishing and kind of doing the work to get yourselves out there. How do you guys feel like the involvement of social media and technology has affected your work or even affected your stories? Because we have noticed that like it's constantly changing. Like the new apps are always out, the new thing, and even the way to reach people or even the way that people reach each other has constantly been in flux. Synithia, I'm going to ask you to maybe give that a try. If not, I will flip it over to Sherrie.
I guess it's very interesting. I'm not a technology person, so I don't look for love online. But I have a niece who met her partner through Tinder, and they have 2 children now, and they've been together for years. So just because love is not always conventional and it's not always you get to meet people through your relationships with other friends, it doesn't mean that love isn't possible online or using technology.
Very true. Sherrie, did you have any thoughts on that?
I guess I looked at the question a little bit different. I think with today's technology, there is a younger generation and who are looking for more to feed their need to read. I mean, really, many years ago, there wasn't Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. I think it offers new authors and established authors the opportunity to revive perhaps some of their old books where they're not stuck with the paper back. They're not forced to sell just in certain stores. I think with the technology, it's really opened the doors for not just the readers to be able to have more choices out there. And some choices are better than others. You know, it's a hit and miss thing. But I think as an author, knowing these books can be partially read through just a few pages or loaned, it makes me work harder to have the best book I can have out there. And I applaud technology that allows our underrepresented cultures, social levels, to get their books out there. Because at one time, it was practically non-existent. It was non-existent, let's be honest. So am I on every platform? No, I couldn't even try to be on every platform. But I try to get on that that will help get my name out there. But I have to say the most is contacting, exposure to other authors. And that's what I like about technology, because in the past, we would kind of be stuck with pretty much who lived near us or who was in the publishing company with us or who maybe our agent represented. Now we can get on there and we can read books from authors that write like us on all levels of experience and meet them and share ideas. And we're not restricted to just the United States and
I think that's a really good point. I know growing up, I was always limited to just reading what was in the library, and the library was limited to whatever they could afford to buy. So you had like the greatest hits, those were always there, and then maybe one or two smaller, like lesser known authors, but they're like, we can't afford to buy a bunch of books, so you guys better like what you get. EmKay or Synithia, have you guys any thoughts on either how technology has affected how your love stories, or how it has helped you or hindered you in getting your books out there?
I think technology, the rise of technology, the change of technology is just something that you absorb into the storytelling process, because that's contemporary society today. Mm-hmm. Just like, you know, they used to not have cars or TVs. And when those newfangled devices came along, all of a sudden they started showing up in stories. I think one thing I've observed is that technology has changed the way people communicate, interact. I think some of the social apps have changed how people even have relationships. I think people connect faster. I think sometimes relationships are more casual. I think sometimes the intimacy progresses faster. And in some genres, subgenres of romance, that's perfectly acceptable. So in some ways, technology has enabled women, has empowered them to kind of grasp their sexuality and be more accountable for it. So if you're a single woman and you want to meet somebody and go out, you don't have to wait for a guy to ask you out in a bar. Now you can go on an app and initiate something. I think you can have some fun with it. The first series I wrote is called Perfect Match, and it was set in Roxanne St. Clair's Barefoot Bay world when she had a Kindle world. And the premise of that series is it's a high-tech reality dating show, and every story in my series, I'm up to 8 now, is a different episode. So it features a different heroine and heroine. It's got the cast of characters who come back, like the show's producer and the woman who developed this high-tech matchmaking protocol, but at the core, it's still a love story. But I used that technological advancement as a springboard into the whole series.
That's really cool. Synithia, do you have any, I know that you've done some books on the fast-paced world of the design show. Do you find that like technology really helped you with that story, or do you have any other insights that you want to share?
Yeah, I think with my Nita Brooks book, The Essence of Perfection, I also showed kind of like the downside of technology, where the main character, her list of regrets was accidentally sent to a national news program. And so now that they bring it up, and now it's on the trending topic across all platforms. And she has to now deal with the fallout of America knowing what are her biggest list of regrets. And America also asking her, hey, start checking stuff off this list. You put it out there, so we want to see you actually not be regretful. So, you know, with that, you see things like that happen in real life, unfortunately, where somebody tweets something they shouldn't, or they post something, a picture they shouldn't, and then they have to deal with the fallout. I didn't make hers, you know, a bad picture or something like that, but, you know, it shows how fast technology moves, and that you do have to kind of double check. And it's like EmKay said, in contemporary, you can't really ignore technology because it's just out there. That's like ignoring a computer if somebody was at work. But you also have to be careful in contemporary that you don't, I think, rely too heavily on something, so that, you know, you're so dated where if somebody's like, oh, she's still on MySpace. This book was written way back in the early 2000s. So I'll mention social media, and I'll mention that they're, you know, talking to each other online, but I may not, you know, have them so deep into one specific type of app kind of thing.
No, that's fair. I mean, MySpace, goodness, like it all just changed though on a dime, like just one day, that was
right.
Which I think brings me to Bridget. I know you mentioned fan fiction, and that has always thrived online, but also tended to like kind of change on a dime. Like things that people were interested in hearing about are suddenly a little less, or the diehards are still like I know I have a friend who does fan fiction for Star Wars, and just blows me away that she's like, this is just a thing. I just do it for fun. What are your thoughts on technology and writing?
It has been a way for a lot of people to make communities. So my roommate and family member is a fanfic scholar, so I kind of know a fair amount in this area because of this. So fan fiction is a culture that is female dominated. There are also a lot of queer and trans folks in the genre in itself. And what's really interesting is since Web 2.0, so the early 2000s, with the digital age and people being all on the internet and technology, we see an explosion of talented, wonderful women and queer and trans folks on the internet producing fiction, producing art, producing websites even. There are people who made websites in devotion to their interest or whatever it is, whatever media they like to consume, they're a fan of. And what's really interesting is this is unpaid, sometimes semi-untapped potential of many skilled women. And this should be a bigger area of things we talk about. And another thing of interest is with this also comes some of the downsides, because it's really interesting that all these female identified people and queer and trans people are writing about white gay boys in relationships with each other almost exclusively. Like about, I forgot what the stats are, but like the top 20 pairings on Archive of Our Own, the most popular current big fanfic archive, I think it was about like 15 to 18 of them are male on male pairings. So it is interesting that despite all these people who are queer identified and are women, we don't see a plethora of like female on female relationships or relationships that aren't exclusively about men. But anyways, these are interesting dynamics that happen in fanfic culture, and I could go on a whole tirade about gender politics and fan fiction and technology.
Well, I think that brings up a good thing that I know is something that we as a society are really looking at, which is representation. And I know that Synithia, you have specifically targeted like what you see, what you're more used to, but how do you guys feel about the representation of underrepresented minorities and other groups? Like, how do you guys feel about like how you bring those into your stories, or are you guys really looking for like a great revolutionary to come forward and help bring those stories to light? Go for it, Sherrie.
I'm sorry, I'm just a talker. I think it's imperative that the romance genre embrace all relationships. The bottom line is romance is about love. Love. That's what it is. Either happy ever after or happy for now. It's about love. And a white man and a white woman are not the only two people that can fall in love. And that's one of the we still have a long way to go, even with national organizations issues and local organization issues. I don't get into politics, but that's why I love the technology today, because it allows the underrepresented to be put out there, to get exposure, to be heard. And but I think as an author, we're all told to write what we know. So I'm not going to write about a culture or a race or anything that I don't know, because it would be wrong. And if I chose to write about a different culture, like a couple of my books have Native American, or actually Sioux, if you want to be correct, characters. I did a ton of research in that arena before I wrote about it, because I don't want to. I don't want to do as some do and show my ignorance. I mean, and it's wrong. I'm not going to write a trans relationship because I don't know any trans individuals. I've read several of those romance novels. Um, Gay romance, I've read those. I have family members who read the book. I read the book and I say, "What do you think?" And they go, "Oh, that's just trash." And I'm like, "Okay," and but I wouldn't write because I don't have that kind of experience. And it's my biggest thing, I think, is um, write what you know. I would never know what it's like to be handicapped because I'm not handicapped. So I can interview 30, 40, 50 handicapped individuals. And unless I can read their minds, I won't have experienced what they've experienced. And this is a personal thing, so I won't write about it.
But that brings up a really good point of you've got people who are new voices in the industry or new voices in the world who are representing those less told stories, which I think is amazing. And for everybody else, we can learn more about their journey or learn more about what they experience through their work, which is
And there are classes being offered now to give you insight. So if you do want to include a character who is not like you, you'll know where to go. We have sensitivity readers. Those are a big thing. If you're definitely including a character in your book that's not like you, then you can connect with community and get sensitivity readers to read your books and let you know, hey, you're totally misrepresenting that character, and you have a choice then: write them out or hit the books and hit the classrooms and learn some more.
No, that's really great.
That's my 2 cents.
Like, does anybody else have any viewpoints or additional information they'd like to share on this? Please, Bridget, if you would.
So one of the things that I've always found really interesting in fan fiction, when people write about the things that they know or actually experience, it's one of the things that's really interesting is here is a plethora of women and girls who write about intimate sexual acts between men with varying degrees of success. And I find this really, really interesting that this is a phenomena that happens. And yet this is not something that they know. And people still write about the things that interest them despite what they do or do not know. So as a trans woman in fandom, okay, I'm just going to be absolutely blunt here. For a while, I was really deeply invested in the One Direction fandom. So boy band. I really, really, really enjoyed Liam and Zayn in a gay relationship. It was my intense weakness. And one of the things that's really important about it, and the thing is, I also really liked imagining Zayn as a trans woman because of that one music video where he cross-dressed. And so I would keep on making these requests. Hey, here's something that's really awesome. Would people be willing to write this? And people aren't interested in doing the work to write about diverse people and put in the work that it takes to make this to make all these diverse characters. So like for the sequel to What Makes You Beautiful, the central character is going to be Jennifer, who is the best friend of the main character, and she is half black. She's also half Chinese. Well, actually, no, sorry, that's a lie. She's a quarter Chinese, half white because half white, mixed, multiracial. I forgot the exact genetic material background of my own characters. And in order to do this, I've been doing a lot of research and have been literally like paying for my friend's time to be able to educate me about issues that are relevant to writing Black characters. I am putting in as much time and effort into being able to write multiple Black characters or part Black characters because it is important to me to write diverse representations of other characters than just my own experience.
No, that's fair. Does anybody else have anything they want to weigh in on?
I will. I think this is a really, really difficult conversation to have. I think a lot of people are sensitive about it. I think there tends to be a defensive edge about it. I often worry about people judging me as a middle-class white woman in a traditional marriage who grew up in a very traditional middle-class kind of setting, writing about people of color, lesbians or gay men because, well, I'm just a white middle-class housewife. But I think as an author, I think part of the privilege is exploring those other identities, researching them. And what is my experience with it? I mean, people look at me and they would say, well, you're just a white woman, what do you know? What they don't know is that for about 15 years, I was married to a Black man and I have 3 biracial children. That lends a different credibility to me as a storyteller, having biracial characters. But I think there's a tendency now to kind of jump on people and say, you can't write that, you can't write that, you don't know that. What qualifies you to write that? Where as an author, that's your privilege. You can write about anything and explore anything, and hopefully you do justice to it with research and sensitivity readers and things like that. But I gave a challenge to myself because this issue is so difficult to confront. I'm working on a lesbian romance, and my sister is a lesbian, and I'm working on a series called Love is All the Colors. It's all the colors, and it's about different issues when biracial people or people of color or people of different ethnicities try to have a relationship. And it wasn't to be a commercial success. It was so that I had to do the research and talk to the people and have those conversations and explore those issues and confront my own biases and move past it, because it is a very, very difficult conversation to have.
Well, that's really fantastic. Synithia, I saw that you wanted to also participate.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes when the question is asked, I feel very ignorant because I'm a white person and I'm not in a minority group. But I do believe that we shouldn't stop people writing what they want to write. If they do the research, if they ask the questions, if they have sensitivity readers, if they learn along the way and they can impart knowledge to other people, why should we stop them from writing?
I do agree that the research is crucial. Synithia, what would you like to add to this conversation?
And what I'll add is that I'm not one of the people who ever tell someone what they can or cannot write. But I do think that everyone has to also recognize any unconscious biases that they have. One of the things that you may see in stories is that someone may think they're doing a good representation of a group, but then they'll still rely on stereotypes, or they'll throw in just the pain of being a person of color or gay or trans, and only want to focus the story on the fact that you have that pain in your life, and that's the main thing you have to overcome. When I don't wake up in the morning thinking, I'm so sad, I'm a Black woman in America, how do I overcome this pain of being a Black woman in America? And that doesn't drive every day in my life. And so I think that for anyone who writes a story, and they represent someone who's from a different group that they're not in, is that they recognize those biases and ask, why are you trying to write that story? Do you want to write that story to show them overcoming the pain of being whatever group they're in? Or is it just because that's how that character came to you and you just want to write about this character? And I think that's where the question comes up, is not necessary to, so you have to accept the fact that you may get that pushback from that group if you write about that and you're just focusing on the fact of it being a tragic, terrible, painful part of their personality. And so that's just what I would say. I won't tell you not to write it, but I would just say everybody needs to be aware of your biases and why you're writing that story.
Y'all, that is an amazing amount of insight. And I really hope that our audience is understanding that these things are doable and achievable, and also that it does take a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of effort on the half of the writer, and that it sounds like you guys are definitely making all of the attempts, which is great. I'm gonna mix things up and ask a slightly less serious question. So if there's anybody on our group that wants to answer, just let me know. But what is the craziest thing that you've encountered in the real world that's stranger than anything that you can make up? Because we know that truth is often stranger than fiction. If there's anyone who wants to take a crack at that, go for it, Sherrie. Your mute button does not love you.
I'm trying to decide if it's a sign I should just keep my mouth shut.
I feel like it's a sign you should stay unmuted.
Huh? Well, like I said, when I first started writing paranormal romance and I wanted to include ghosts, I did a lot of ghost walks, ghost tours, took classes in psychics, mediums, course, and I love ghost hunter shows. I mean, it's just, nothing is too scary as long as it's a slasher thing. I don't like the mental stuff. Anyways, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, my sister was working in Colorado, and I went up there, and we got a room at the Stanley Hotel, the one where Stephen King stayed, and yes, I've read all things Stephen King, and I was very bummed we couldn't get his actual hotel room, but we did get in the room next to the room where the ghost hunters were, and they actually caught something. And of course, we took the ghost tour. And I mean, I'll be honest, folks, I don't think I've ever really seen a ghost. Questionable orbs, if you're into that. But we were at the Stanley Hotel, and we could hear the people next door getting all excited, wanting something paranormal to happen. And I looked at my sister and I said, "Are you going to be scared if something paranormal happens? Because I'm going to be tickled pink and I'll probably start giggling." And she's like, "Well, no," because I've talked her into not being scared of these things. And of course, nothing happened that night. So, but we still got to stay on the same floor where Stephen King stayed, and big fan. And so we were getting ready in the morning, and we heard some kids outside, little kids, laughing and running up and down the hallway. And I get up early. I'm up at 4, and I forced my sister to get up at 5. So that's really early for kids to be running around. And but I had to whip open the door because during the tour, we were on the floor where children's voices have been heard. So I whipped open the door, and there was nobody there. And my sister and I both heard it. So, yes, I'm crazy, guys. I believe in ghosts and spirits, but they're so much fun.
I mean, ghost races at 4 a.m. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah, I'm kind of odd like that. Well, I normally get up that early to write. So even on vacation, I tend to wake up early. So
nice to know that the spirits had your alarm clock. Don't worry.
There we go.
Anybody else have a fun story to share? I know it's kind of a big change. But Synithia, what do you have?
I'll go on with the story of ghosts. So in both of my published books, there is an encounter with a ghost, and both of them are real. So in The Cat's Out of the Bag, it's in a jail in Albany in Western Australia. And it's something that my daughter encountered when she was 8, and we went on a ghost tour there. And in the second book, Let Sleeping Dogs Lie, we visited a quarantine centre in Sydney, New South Wales, my daughter and I. And we were in the gravedigger's cottage, and the door of the wardrobe swung out and hit me. And because I'm skeptical, I'm like, oh, this is just crap. So I've gone to the wardrobe and I'm examining it, thinking, well, there must be a lever or something somewhere that this door has opened magically. And there was nothing like that. So I closed the door, forcibly shut it, and it banged open again and smashed into me. So I put those encounters into my book.
I need to go to Australia.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. I am sorry, though. It sounds like that wardrobe had it out for you. So that's unfortunate. So I am going to change again to a slightly more serious note. I know that we know that the romance genre tends to lead things. And would like to ask you guys, how do you find that the roles of women in your stories reflect the changing roles of women in society now? And if there's any like trends that you guys want to call out about like how women's roles have really evolved.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Bridget,
No.
do you want to go? Oh, I wasn't sure. You guys really should just put me on mute.
Oh no, I love it.
I'm working on my master's degree, and I actually did a paper on romance and history, and I don't have her name. Very well-known romance author wrote a paper on the trends, social trends, and their reflection in romance. So I think romance being one of the top sellers in fiction tells you that they're read. So it's not it's not like one of the lowest trends. I mean, they're way up there with sales. But the where once we started with I hate this term, bodice rippers, and women being passive and not having a choice, not being allowed to vote. And you can see that in romance books. You can see when women started doing marches, women in the military, women on the front line. You can read a romance now. You can read, it's not just the handsome CEO of the big corporate America. It's now the beautiful female CEO in corporate America, breaking that glass ceiling. And I also think the women have gotten stronger. They're definitely was reflected in the books during the women's liberation, burning of the bras, and the women just taking charge, and they're selling. So that tells you that the women today want reflections of real women, and they want stories they can escape in and give them hope that, yeah, they may be the they may be the receptionist, but if they work hard, and they could eventually become CEO, and they can win court cases, and they can become police officers, and none of that takes away from their ability to love. And Bridget, I mean, like we said before, with the books that she's writing, that's showing everyone possibilities. It's giving them hope. And I think that's part of romance, is to give people hope that there's someone out there who's going through what you're going through, and you're not alone, and they can find their happy ever after. They're happy for now. Well, and right then, in the past, a requirement of romance, they had to be married at the end. Now that's not the case. They could just have a commitment. They don't even have to exchange rings. And in some paranormal, like with aliens and stuff, they just go through a ritual, or just by announcing that they're partners, that's it. And that's acceptable. And people are reading that. And I think a little girl, I don't want to slam the big name people, but a little girl waiting for her prince to come and sweep her off her feet is a thing of the past. Not that it doesn't happen, and not that it doesn't sell, but it does. But so does the man who waits for the king to sweep him off his feet, or the man who waits for the woman to sweep him off his feet. So I think we've come a long way. And I think romance, of all the genres that I've read, outside of science fiction, because they've always gone far ahead on stuff, but they've always pushed the boundaries. But I think romance is a strong reflection of social change.
No, that's fantastic. EmKay or Synithia, I know you guys work in a more contemporary genre version of the genre. What do you guys think?
I would say that most of my stories are very traditional in the sense that it's one man, one woman who end up in a committed relationship. But on the whole, what I'm seeing in romance is more exploration of different roles for women, more acceptance of women owning their sexuality and not just within the confines of marriage or even a committed relationship. There are more and more readers who are coming to accept things like polyamorous relationships, committed threesomes. They're reading books where a woman might be married but in a bad marriage and she falls in love with someone else. And even 2 or 3 years ago, that would not have gone over at all. There's still a lot of traditional readers who object to it, but I think authors are able to explore some of those different roles, those different relationships. And that's one of the things I'm having fun with in my Single Dad series. There's going to be one of the heroes who ends up a stay-at-home dad while the woman she's the billionaire CEO. There's another one where there's 2 dads who fall in love with a woman and they have a committed threesome relationship. And just the fact that you can play with these different roles, different identities, different relationship dynamics, I think is kind of exciting.
No, that's really, and it just amazes me to think that this is just a big change that's happened over just the last couple of years as people are.
I'm sorry, I did want to mention, sometimes it's not as big as transgender romances or something, but even women who maybe they never married and had children, there's heroines for them now. There's seasoned romance for people who are over 40 or 50 or 60. And these are becoming firmly entrenched subgenres within romance that there was never a readership for, or there was never a platform for 10 years ago.
No, that's really fantastic insight. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to this?
Yep, I'll add something.
Thank you, Synithia.
So if you look at Regency romance, you would see that a woman back then would have to be married. She has to marry to retain her station in life. Whereas in today's world, we have strong independent women who don't need to marry and who can make themselves and be successful. And I like to write about those women.
Actually, I think that dovetails very neatly into Synithia. I feel like your books are very strong women leading their own lives and doing their own things. Do you feel like you're kind of moving more into like a more realistic modern woman role, or do you just feel like this is just how life is?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I even come up against some of my traditional beliefs. I mean, I grew up in a small town in South Carolina. So I have some of that, traditional upbringing, but I listen a lot to readers, and social media is a great place to hear, a reader may throw out, something that they don't like about romance, or they may ask a question about romances with this. And if I hear the readers are asking these questions, especially when it comes from like a younger person, then I know that these are the kind of stories that they would be interested in. And these are the type of heroes and heroines that they want to see reflected in the stories. So I do pay attention to that to kind of, figure out what do people want to see reflected in those stories. But then also turning it around to, just flipping the switch on even my own ideals. What if there is a character who does not want children? What does that look like? Why? And it doesn't have to be a tragic reason why. It could just be the choice not to have children. Working and being able to take care of themselves. I love Disney. I love princesses. I love a billionaire to come in and pay all my bills. That would be awesome. But most of the characters in my story save themselves. I think Sherrie said it, those will still be out there. There'll still be a place for that, because again, who wouldn't want a billionaire to come pay everything off in their house?
I'll take one.
I'll take it. But on the other side, everyday life is we get up, we go to work, we pay our bills, we have to sometimes save ourselves. And I think reflecting that in the stories is what readers want to see.
No, that's really true. I will say that I have always wished to win the lottery until I've heard a lot about the lottery curse, and now I'm like, oh, so no such thing as free money. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I am going to, I know we've talked a lot about how the audience is super involved in kind of giving you guys feedback and really like helping you guys with the gearing your stories up. But how do you guys handle keeping your stories marketable to an audience that just voraciously reads? I mean, most people I know who read romance and that's like their favorite genre read 10, 15, 20 books in a heartbeat without really thinking about it.
We write faster. We're up at 4 a.m. And again, I told you need to mute me.
Oh no.
Like EmKay, she writes the shorter stories. I have 8 books out in a novella series, and I have those coming out in between the times that my traditional books are being published, because you have to, or you lose your audience. You have to get on to the social media platforms. You have to offer the readers who read something that you like and want more. If you can't type faster, you need to come up with shorter stories, because they are ferocious. They want those stories, and that's why I went to writing the novellas. I mean, and it's a 12-book series. I'm only on 8, but they're short reads and they're faster reads. And there's an app that we were talking about, technology. Several of my author friends are on there where they do a chapter a week, and they supplement their income with that, or they write fan fiction, or they write some write stories where they do a scene at a time on their blog posts or in their newsletters. Yeah.
Bridget,
yeah, I just learned to write faster.
That's fantastic. Bridget, I know that you're not confined to one genre. Do you find that you're still kind of finding that your work's getting devoured as much in the other genres, or do you find that your more romance-oriented audience is kind of eagerly awaiting another book?
I play by completely different rules because I'm in a completely different, I guess, area. I don't experience that. I've interacted with some fans. It's more about when I have something good that out, then it's like, yay, it's a new thing out. I don't experience the same pressures because I am ridiculously busy being a PhD student, and there's barely time to write fiction. I've been trying to spend the past year trying to write the sequel to What Makes You Beautiful, but school assignments and research projects come first, and it's an unfortunate thing.
No, but I think that's kind of a truth that maybe all of our authors can relate to, the idea that there really isn't enough time to create the kind of stories and write the way you want to write and still keep your audience engaged with you and not impatiently at your social media demanding a new book. I know, EmKay, you said that you write like faster reads, things that are just
right.
fun.
I have a very time-consuming day job. I'm actually a project manager for self-published romance authors, and I work about 14 hours a day doing that. But that kind of immerses me in the romance community. So when I'm not releasing my own books, I'm still connecting with readers. And oftentimes, I don't even know if the readers know, but this is a business for authors. And so they have marketing strategies and how frequently they publish, how frequently they release, the fact that maybe they do a novella in between full-length books, or the fact that they put their first 3 books into a box set. They may not understand. Those are marketing decisions. Those are business decisions. And authors have to do what works for them and what generates an income for them. One of the things that I think is really important is staying connected with your readers between the releases. So that's where things like social media may come in, sharing, teasers from the book that you're working on. One of the things I do is I will share books from other authors that are similar to mine to keep my readers engaged between my releases. The fact that I write short and release frequently, usually once a month, sometimes twice a month, is just because I was a journalist for a lot of years. I can take an assignment and turn it around. I can write to deadline. I can write to task. Some authors don't work like that. But what I found was that the shorter books suited my voice, suited the topics I like to write about, and that just worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody.
No, that's really fascinating. So Synithia, I know that you have two names that you write under. Does having the two different lines of books, does that become something where you can't keep up with it, or is that even a factor?
It wasn't so much a factor this time around because I did one under, like I was able to do Nita Brooks in like 2018, write those books and then get back to the Synithia Williams books in 2019. I had a harder time when I was writing for two different publishers. And so the deadlines kind of overlapped. So that's where, that writing the deadline and, if you're writing multiple series and you have to get the books out for those series at similar timeframes, I think that does become very challenging, having to keep up with that. And so it's very true of trying to be on social media, give the updates to my readers to let them know, being honest. You have some readers who'll just be like, tapping on your virtual door, when's that book? I need it tomorrow. But for the most part, they understand when you give them the teasers, when you give them the updates and you let them know where you are on the story, then I think that builds that anticipation, but it also lets them know, hey, I'm human too. I have a job, I have a family in the world of COVID. So I may not be able to, put stuff out as quickly as before.
No, that's awesome. Synithia, have you found that, to be honest, like the current situation has this slowed you down in writing or affected how you manage your social presence?
Probably not so much for me. In Australia, we haven't had it quite as bad as the rest of the world. And as an author, you're sort of just a secluded person anyway. So I go to work every day and then I come home and write, and that's nothing really different than what it was before COVID. I do find it difficult to release as quickly as other authors, being a full-time worker. So my release schedule is every 6 months, and that's something that I'm able to sustain. So that's what I do.
Wow, I'm honestly, as a professional, I'm impressed at how well you guys handle deadlines, because I know I quite often find that I'm like, oh, that's due now. So I'm going to end on a silly question, but I am going to ask each and every one of you guys. Have you guys written or read any stories that you wish you could live? Is there a character that you would love to change places with? And I'm actually going to start with EmKay. It can be your story, it can be somebody else's. Is there someone I'd like to switch out and be that person for a moment?
I would love to be Hermione Granger. I am a huge Harry Potter fan. I listen to the audiobooks every night while I'm sleeping, and I circulate through them, and I watch the movies and read the books. So I would love to be a part of that world.
Oh, that's fantastic. I am going to switch over to Sherrie. Who would you like to switch out with?
I think probably with the main character in my first Coweta County book. She went on spirit walks with her grandfather, and did Trail of Tear tours, and then she was also verified the existence of ghostly activity in places, and she was a big believer in and she had this really cool general from the Civil War who was a ghost who resided at her house, along with a quilter who resided at her business, and her grandmother resided at the house along with like two others, and she went to different conversations with them, and it was fun. It was so fun writing her. I thought, well, that would be so great to actually have a conversation, have somebody, because at one point she leaves and she asks the general if he could watch the house, and then you hear bugles and you see, it's really cool.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Bridget, is there any character, yours or anyone else's, that you would love to switch out with?
I'm actually not exactly sure, but I would love to be able to live in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender or Steven Universe, because these are all worlds where chances are someone like me could exist without any trouble, and it'd be cool to have like elemental powers, or to be able to live amongst a whole bunch of aliens who are really, really, for the most part, nice, or being one of them. That'd be fun. But yeah, these are like some worlds I'd love to live in.
Oh, that's really fantastic, though. I would love to be able to, like, right now, I'm, you know, in Atlanta, it's 80 in the shade. I would love to be able to, like, cool it down. So, Synithia, is there anybody or any place that you'd like to be that's not this life?
I can't think of a character that I'd like to change with, but if I was to choose one, I'd want to choose one who travels, so I could get to experience different countries and different cultures.
That is fantastic. I think that would be really cool too. I just honestly at this point would like to be someplace else. Love my house. Synithia, same question for you. Is there any place or anyone that you would like to switch with or be at or hang out with?
I'm kind of like Bridget. I would like to hang out with aliens. Anything that's like fantasy or in space. Like I'm ready to buy the land on Mars for my future generations to go ahead and have. And I recently got into dramas and sea dramas, and I love the fantasy ones. And so I just finished My Love from a Star. So I would love to, like, whatever planet he's from, meet someone like that. I think that would be cool. So anything with the fantasy of space or travel to another world, I would love to do that.
Oh, that would be super fantastic. So our Q&A is open now. If anybody has a question and they want to drop it into the chat, we will pop over to them. In the meantime, while we wait and see if anybody's got a question.
Here's actually a really great question. Hi, it's Sarah. There's a really great question from, and I'm going to mispronounce the name, and I'm so sorry. Wheelock, they had a great question about how often are objections to progressive representation coming actually from readers, and how often is it actually coming from publishers or editors who might be afraid of taking risks?
That is great. I will let anyone in our group answer, and this is a safe space, so if you want to say something mean about a publisher, that's fine by me.
I'm going to pop up just real quick. The traditional publishers that everyone knows, I believe that they are trying to relax their requirements, but we have to admit in the past, yeah, wasn't happening. It was the publishers versus the readers weren't the ones, in my experience that I've heard. It wasn't the readers, it was who's publishing. And that's why we have, and again, that's another thing about technology. We have small publishers, individual publishers. So I think it was very difficult, if not impossible, to get a book written that wasn't white woman and white man. Just, it's a challenge.
EmKay, I know you said that you worked with self-publishing writers more. Is any of that because you find that it is a little harder to work with the publishers, especially like the big ones?
No, not so much. But I guess what I always wonder is how do the traditional publishers balance their economic marketing decisions with what they owe society and a socially just kind of mission. And I often think that the money drives the books that they sell, which is an unfortunate thing, which is why self-publishing is such a great option for marginalized and underrepresented minorities to get their stories out there. I think what's happening now is putting more pressure on traditional corporations to find a way to represent these voices, though.
Which I think is something that's great. Does anybody else have any experiences with either publishing issues, like not being able to tell the story you want to be able to tell, or anything else that they'd like to answer?
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You
go
see
ahead.
it more from the publishers, who are a little bit more leery of wanting to do a certain type of story. Even when Harlequin had the Kamani line, they had very strict standards of what you had to do under Kamani that you didn't have to worry about that if you wrote for like Desire or some of the other ones. They've gotten better. But that is why a lot of underrepresented groups chose self-publishing. You have that freedom and the readers are out there because they're selling. But on the flip side, if publishing is now willing to give you the opportunity and it's the opportunity you want to take, I would just say be smart about it. Make sure it's a deal that you want to make, but also don't feel guilty for taking that opportunity that was denied to you before, no matter what it is. So I think you just got to view it smartly, but also realize that there are other options out there for you.
No, that's very true. Bridget, did you have something you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, one of the interesting experiences I had with editors was in one of my published pieces, I was told to remove any explicit like anti-racist comments made by my characters.
Wow.
Because it was a little bit too unmarketable to talk explicitly about, like, I'm just trying to think of how to talk around this without naming any publishers, to talk about the experiences of okay, they didn't want to activate the defensive response from white folks on being called out about racism, basically. But I've generally had actually a very good experience because I've been working with publishers that are for marginalized folks. So Topside Press, Lorimer Press, who were the first apparently authors in Canada to produce novels that had racialized folks for youth in all of Canada back in the day, and helped co-found the Trans Femme Press Heartspark.
That's really cool.
So yeah, this is like there are presses out there for us.
No, that's fantastic. And honestly, I'm hoping that that'll be more of where the industry grows. I know we have two other questions. Jennifer noticed, EmKay, you talked about how you have a real job outside of, or an additional job besides just writing, helping to publish authors. Do any of our other authors also have jobs outside of writing? That Synithia, what do you do outside of?
I'm a projects officer, so I work full-time in a manufacturing industry. So we build trains and we refurbish trains. So that's a full-time job. That's usually 8 hours a day. I try to keep it to 8 hours, but sometimes it stretches longer.
Wow. And I know, Bridget, you said that you are a full-time PhD student. Do you do, this is already a lot like you, right? And you're a student. And it seems like so much.
Yep, I also do talks, I do research projects. I've done a bunch of just random side things, being involved with consultations for diversity education. Yeah, I honestly have a ridiculously full workload at all times.
Wow. Synithia, do you do anything besides, I mean, you got two authors, you're two authors in one. So that is quite a ton.
Yeah, I work full-time for local government on water quality and environmental issues, manage people in my day job. So yeah, I get up and I go to work. Well, I've been working from home recently, but I do still work full-time, yeah.
Wow, Sherrie, how about you? Do you have anything else? I mean, this is an impressive group.
I used to work full-time. I got out of that to write full-time. Can I mention the other chapter? You know my bio. I'm the president of the Georgia Romance Writers Association. That keeps me busy. Um, sorry, guys. I'm a full-time grandmother. I babysit my granddaughter while her mother works. So, and I don't get paid. I wish I did, but I don't. So, um, but when I worked full-time, I had to find time to write because I love writing, and I don't ever see myself not writing. So that's why um, I trained myself to get up at 4 a.m. And yeah, but it's nice and quiet. I'm an early morning person.
4
So,
a.m. Gosh, that's
yeah.
awesome. I write at night.
I'm also
I
in bed.
can't get up.
I'm also in bed by 9 unless I'm watching my granddaughter. Then it could be 10 or 10:30. So, yeah, if I'm watching her at night, but during the daytime.
You guys are so impressive. Like, you're seriously squeezing every minute of every hour, because that's just very impressive. I know our next question was from Amelia, and she wanted to know how you deal with the shifting point of views when you write in the third person perspective. That's a very technical question, so I'm going to step back and let you guys answer that.
I can't answer that because I write in first person, but I do have dual point of views in my novels, and I just find it easy to swap from one to the other. Once you connect with your characters, you know how they think, you know how they act, it's easy to go from one character to the other.
That's totally fair.
My full-length novels are third person. My novellas are first person. I think writing in first person has improved my third person because you have to use those darn active verbs. But I wasn't sure if you were asking for if there's a specific route you should go down. Should you stick to third person or first person, or were you talking about switching POVs within the story? You know, there's a lot of rules out there, but not every rule has to be followed. And I think, I would hope everyone who writes agrees with me, your characters drive the story. If they want to talk in first person, you got to tell it in first person, or you're not being true to that character. If they're writing it in third person. But I don't know. It's a challenge to write both. I don't know if I have a favorite. Yeah, I do. I prefer first person to write in, but it's funny. I love reading third person. I'm not a big first person reader, which is weird. So that's fine.
I don't know if she's asking about what is known as head hopping, where within a single scene, you're shifting between different characters' points of view. Generally, what I do when I'm writing is it's one of the characters' point of view for an entire scene. Mm-hmm. And then I will shift to the other character's point of view, maybe for the next scene. And oftentimes the way I decide that is which character has the most at risk, or who is that scene most pivotal to? That will dictate if it's either from the heroine's point of view or the hero's point of view.
That's a really interesting perspective.
And just a quick thing, there is the very famous romance author who does a bunch of head hopping. But if I was Nora, I'd do it too. So I'm just saying. But some authors do write it, and they do it very well. So.
Amazing. Well, guys, thank you all so much for your participation. This has been so insightful and so amazing. And I'm hoping that everyone else who's listened is inspired to go out and read, or go out and write, or to just tackle everything in the world. And one thing I want to make sure that we do before we leave is to give you guys a chance to remind our audience about what books that you guys have upcoming, because I think most of you guys had something that's either out or will be out soon. I am going to start with EmKay. If you would please remind our audience what you have available.
I just released The Single Dad and the Country Girl, and in September I have the next book in my series, The Single Dad and the Career Girl. I also have some short stories and novelettes that will be coming out in between those releases.
Absolutely fantastic. Sherrie, if you don't mind going next.
I have the third book of my Coweta County series coming out this fall. I'm praying for an October release because it happens around Halloween, but it may be November. And that is called Dead Bodies, Dead Languages. And it does have some Old English in there, so if any of you are linguists, you'll like the book. And book 9 of my 12-part novella series is due out next spring. So, and then hopefully next spring. I'm currently going for my master's degree, so it may be next summer.
That's so fantastic. And I know, Bridget, you have a nonfiction piece that you just completed and is available.
Yep. I have my books on me because I got the author copies. Trans and Autistic, Stories from Life at the Margins. It's co-edited by one of my colleagues. And of course, I have my one novel out, What Makes You Beautiful. You can find other publications of mine in anthologies and on the internet. You could probably find my web presence somewhere.
Fantastic. Synithia, I know that you have your Down Under series, and if you would remind our audience what you have available and what's coming out.
Okay, so my first book, which is The Cat's Out of the Bag, that was published last year, and that's about a secret billionaire and a tortured heroine. My second book, which was published at the end of July, is Let Sleeping Dogs Lie. And that's a second chance romance, which is based around a $1 million scavenger hunt in Sydney. And my third book, which I'm releasing at the end of the year, is Get Off Your High Horse. And that is revolving around a crown prince and an Australian farm girl.
Fantastic. And Synithia, I know that your next book out is right when my birthday is, so I love birthday gifts.
Yep, so Scandalous Secrets is the second book in my Jackson Fall series. He's a senatorial candidate who's being blackmailed. He said that he was someone's father. It's a flip on the secret baby, but he really isn't. And now that's kind of coming back. And so in order to protect the one, he said that so he could protect her at the time. But now that's coming back up and it's threatening his campaign and her daughter. So like I said, I like soapy, messy romances. And I'd love for anybody, I'm online, find me Twitter, Instagram, I'm mostly active. And I'm also on Books in Maine, where you can get snippets of my novels and kind of see if you like my writing and then go from there.
Well, all of you guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been an amazing experience. For our audience, if you guys didn't get a chance to check out our the Metro Atlanta Women's National Book Association Facebook page, we do have our links to our authors' profiles and to some of their books, and we will try to republish those. And we will hopefully see people back for our October 3rd book club. You guys, again, thank you so much for your time. This has been really an amazing evening. Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.